Most of the time, we like it when users pay for transportation models, right? Economists are very fond of saying that, it's crazy the federal government subsidizes John F. Kennedy Airport given how rich the people are going through, and you don't get efficient use if people are not paying for the congestion that they create on the streets. But sometimes you actually don't want customers to pay for everything. And those are the cases in which it actually doesn't cost a lot to have an extra person on your train. It doesn't cost a lot to have an extra person on your bus. And you know what? That person being on the train means that they cause a little bit less crowding on the city streets if they were driving. So in those cases, you actually want costs to actually be greater than the price. You want to have undercharging. And the language of economics, you want to be charging people the marginal cost, meaning the cost to actually let that person travel rather than the average cost, which was the cost of actually providing the service. But when the marginal cost is below the average cost and you really want the price to be less than the cost of provision, then you got to make up the shortfall. And I think one of the most ingenious examples of making up that shortfall is in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong has actually really gone at this in a unique way. They have really connected the transit system and development to be a whole, to be one of the same in doing it. The Hong Kong MTR is only about 35 years old. When they started from day one, they set out the goal, and it goes directly to the point that you're making, that the system had to be financially self-sustainable. Now, by the way, this is the British colonial government at that point in time. They're being very clear that they wanted to make sure that that was the case. And the recognition was that if the MTR was built and if lines were built, that this would be a boost to development, it would be a boost to value, it would allow for a lot more housing to be created in doing it. And rather than treat that as being external to the transit system, a classic externality, they internalized it into the transit system. And they allowed the MTR to actually become the developer above its train stations. And so the cost of putting a deck above a depot, for example, where the trains are held, now becomes the development of 6 towers that would be above it in doing that. And by doing that, what they were really saying is the difference between the value that existed, the value in an unimproved state, and the value that could be created if you create the train system, if you build a deck, if you build the towers, should accrue to the MTR. Right. And if that supports the transit system, that's fine. They'll also be required to produce a certain amount of public amenity. In some developments, it may be a school. In other developments, it may be a park or other things that are being done. The MTR will typically provide a shopping mall or a shopping center, again, affiliated with this development in doing it, and will usually retain the ownership of that shopping mall as well. And that then becomes one more stream. So there's really 3 streams that I would say support the MTR. The first is fares, you mentioned it before, $1 a ride or thereabouts. The second is the monies that come from the sale of apartments or the sale of development rights to developers. And the third is the retained interest in developments, either as the shopping mall operator or as the property manager.
What are the things that MTR has that makes it capable of doing that American transit authorities typically don't have? And what's the difference about its institutional design that makes this possible, that would make it, let's say, challenging in American context?
I would give MTR a huge amount of credit. I think they work to develop expertise in each of these areas. So they've been willing to hire people, they've been willing to develop expertise in doing this. They treat it as a serious function of their business in doing it. I don't think there's anything that necessarily stops this from happening in a U.S. context, in a transit system, but I think we've taken a much different view. I think we've taken an arm's length view of this and in thinking about it. It's also the case that the MTR is a private, publicly traded company. The Hong Kong government owns the vast majority of the shares, 77% of the shares, but the company is traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It works under the listing rules of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And notwithstanding the fact that it has a government ownership through share structure, it has an independence in the way that it operates that says it doesn't operate as a government entity in doing that.